Hello, beautiful people. It's Lulu. I'm so happy to be with you again. Last week, I shared something that might have surprised you. That every frustrating relationship pattern, every repeated argument, every moment of feeling misunderstood can be traced back to one relationship, the one with yourself. If you listened to last week's episode on repairing your relationship with yourself, this one builds on that. But don't worry if you didn't listen. This stands on its own. Because today we're taking a deeper look into how this actually plays out in real life. Because here's something that I've become aware of. Once you start seeing these patterns, you can't unsee them. And more importantly, once you understand them, you can change them. However, I actually prefer the word shift. Let's say you can shift these patterns. The word change has a ton of baggage that comes with it and can make us feel like we're doing things wrong. So we'll stick with the word shift. We'll be exploring something that has radically changed how I approach connection, communication, and conflict. And that is how your internal world quietly drives your external relationships and how the relationship you have with yourself shapes what plays out in real life. Welcome to the Lulu Essey Podcast, where we do things differently. There's no editing, no polish, just honest conversations that offer you practical tools to transform your life from the inside out. I'd like to start with something that might feel a bit uncomfortable at first, but I promise it's really freeing once you get a handle on it. And that is pattern recognition. It's about becoming aware of how your inner world shows up in your relationships. Your relationships are mirrors. Not perfect mirrors, but mirrors nonetheless. The things that trigger you most about other people, often those things are reflecting something back to you about your own patterns, your fears, or unhealed parts. Let me give you some examples of how this might look in real life. Maybe you have a friend who's always cancelling plans at the last minute, and it sends you into a spiral of, they don't care about me, I'm not important enough. That reaction might be less about their behavior and more about your own abandonment fears or struggles with feeling worthy of other people's time. Or perhaps you have a colleague who always speaks up confidently in meetings, and instead of admiring that quality, you find yourself thinking, they're so arrogant. They think they know everything. That judgment might actually be reflecting your own fear of speaking up, taking space, or even being seen. Or maybe you're in a relationship with someone who needs a lot of alone time, and you find yourself constantly questioning whether they love you enough. That anxiety might be showing you where you struggle to trust your own worthiness of love. Take a moment right now and ask yourself, who in your life pushes your buttons the most? What could that be showing you about yourself? Don't judge what comes up. Just notice with curiosity. Let's be real though, this isn't about excusing shitty behavior from others or making everything your fault. Sometimes people suck and genuinely behave badly, and that's on them. That sort of stuff is out of our control. But what is within our control is our response to their behavior. The gift of pattern recognition is that it shows you where you still have work to do with yourself. And when you do that work, when you heal those patterns, you'll notice that either those situations stop pushing your buttons as much, or sometimes you'll even stop attracting those dynamics altogether. And this brings me to something that could genuinely shift every relationship in your life. And that is understanding the difference between reacting and responding. Most of us live in this pattern. Trigger, reaction. Button push, immediate reaction. Someone says something, or does something, or doesn't do something, and we immediately react. We get defensive, we shut down, we lash out, we withdraw. It's automatic, it's unconscious, and honestly, it's often not our best selves showing up. It's more often the hurt or scared part of us that shows up. But there's another way. Trigger, pause, response. The pause is everything. The pause is where your power lives. The pause is where you get to choose who you want to be in this moment, instead of being at the mercy of your automatic patterns. I'll give you a real example from my own life. My partner and I were having a conversation last week, and he said something that immediately triggered my "I'm not good enough" story. My automatic reaction would normally have been to get really defensive, lash out, and definitely shut down emotionally. But instead, I caught myself. And I didn't catch myself because I'm smart or special, but because I have been practicing these tools. I took a pause, literally just a few seconds, a few breaths, and I asked myself, what's really happening here? Is he actually attacking me, or is my old story getting activated? In that pause, I realized he wasn't criticizing me at all. He was actually trying to help me problem solve something I'd been struggling with. But my trigger heard criticism because that was what I was primed to hear based on my own patterns. So instead of reacting from that triggered place, I was able to respond. And I said something to the effect of, I'm feeling defensive right now, and I want to tell you how wrong you are, which probably means my brain is making this about something else. Help me understand and explain what you meant. That pause and that response completely changed the trajectory of our conversation. Instead of an argument, we had connection. Instead of distance, we had understanding. The pause doesn't have to be long. It can be as simple as taking a conscious breath or asking yourself, what's really going on here? Or even just saying, give me a second to get a handle on this. And it also doesn't mean you have to like or agree with what everyone else says to you. That's not what we're doing here. But what we are doing is creating space, giving a pause, so we don't become like Pavlov's dog and just react when we get our buttons pushed. Because pushed, they will be. So if this story made you think of a recent conflict, maybe just hit pause for a moment and make a note of what came up for you. There is fascinating science behind why this pause is so powerful. Relationship researchers Dr. John and Julie Gottman discovered what happens when we get what they call emotionally flooded. When our heart rate goes above 100 beats per minute during conflict, we literally are not able to access the rational part of our brain. We're operating from pure survival mode. But here's the beautiful part. Even a 20-second pause can help regulate your nervous system enough to get back into what they call your window of tolerance. That sweet spot where you can actually think clearly and respond from your values instead of responding from your wounds. I'm curious, where do you notice this trigger reaction pattern most in your life? Is it at work when someone questions your ideas? With family? During holiday gatherings? In your relationships where you feel criticized? Now, in that pause, one of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself is, am I seeing myself in their behavior, or is their behavior actually reflecting something true about our dynamic? This is the difference between projection and reflection, and learning to tell them apart is relationship gold. Projection is when you see yourself in someone else's behavior. You assume they have the same motivations, fears, or patterns that you do. You might think someone is being judgmental because you tend to be judgmental. Or you might assume someone doesn't care because you struggle to show that you care. Reflection, on the other hand, is when someone's behavior is actually reflecting something real about the dynamic between you. Maybe they are being dismissive because you haven't been listening. Maybe they are pulling away because you've been overwhelming them with your needs. Here's how to tell the difference. Get curious instead of certain. In other words, you have to be willing to give up the need to be right and replace it with the desire to be curious. And it's a tough ask because we all want to be right about everything, whether we acknowledge that or not. Instead of immediately assuming you know why someone is behaving a certain way, ask yourself, what else could this mean? What am I missing? What is the situation showing me about myself? What about me is being reflected back at me? And sometimes, if it feels right, you can even ask the other person directly. I noticed you seemed frustrated and pissed off earlier. Is there something I'm missing? I'm making up a story about what just happened. Can you help me and tell me how you feel about it? The amazing thing about approaching relationships with this kind of curiosity is that it takes you out of the victim mode and puts you back in your power. Instead of being at the mercy of other people's behavior, you become curious about what you can learn and how you can grow. And remember, our relationships are all a reflection of the one we have with ourselves. Now, please don't use this as something to beat up on yourself about when your relationships hit a bad patch, or when they're not going the way you thought they would be. Be aware, be curious, be open. Don't judge yourself or others, for that matter. And don't rush into fixing mode, because we love to fix relationships. I would like to give you 2 really simple tools that you can start using immediately in your relationships. The first tool, the pause practice. The next time you feel triggered by someone, the next time you feel that familiar button push, and you will, we all do, instead of immediately reacting, try this. Take 1 conscious breath and ask yourself, what's the story I'm telling myself about what just happened? Then ask, what else could this mean? This simple pause can completely change how you show up. And all it takes is a moment of curious reflection, a moment of pause and awareness. We are seeking to respond instead of to react. The second tool is what I call the weekly relationship check-in. Once a week, choose any day. Ask yourself, what patterns showed up in my relationships this week? Where did I react instead of respond? What did my triggers teach me about what still needs healing or focus in me? This isn't about judgment, it's about awareness. And awareness is where all shifts start to happen and transformation begins. These tools work because they helping you develop what's called relational self-awareness, the ability to see how your inner world is showing up in your connections with others. Now, before I wrap up, I want to share something exciting with you. As we move into summer, I'm going to try something new. Starting next week, I'm launching a summer series of shorter, more playful episodes. Think 15 minutes of focused, practical content that you can digest while you're living your best, most groovy summer life. I'm calling it the Summer Superfood series. And just like I've talked about gratitude being a mental fitness superfood, we're going to explore other nourishing practices for your mind, your energy, and your joy. Think confidence quickies, tiny rebellions against perfections, and the neuroscience of how moving your body moves your mind. It's going to be lighter, a bit more playful, but still packed with the practical tools you've come to expect. And I'd love your feedback on this new format. Whether it serves you, what you like about it, what you don't like about it, what you'd like to see more of. We honored winter and went inwards and did a lot of deep work. And now it's time to honor summer with all the joy and activity it brings. This is going to be a trip, an outrageously, deliciously magical trip. Remember, beautiful people, the most important relationship you will ever have is the one with yourself. And when you start healing that relationship, when you start showing up for yourself with curiosity instead of criticism, every other relationship in your life begins to shift. And even the smallest pause can open the door to deeper connection. Your relationships become mirrors for your growth instead of sources of pain. Your triggers become teachers instead of threats, and your connections with others become deeper, more honest, and more joyful. If this episode helped you see your relationship patterns in a new light, please share it with someone you love, 2 someones you love, 3 someones you love. And if you have 2 seconds, rating this podcast helps more people find these conversations. And you can also find me on my YouTube channel. And as always, what comes from the heart reaches the heart. And today, like every day, with curiosity, compassion, and the courage to see ourselves clearly, this comes straight from my heart to yours.